Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Military Trailblazers Office Hours. Thanks for taking the time again on this Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and learning. Now, I'm your host, Carlos Navarro. I'm a lead technical architect here at Salesforce and a military trailblazer myself. Each week, we invite a host, a co-host, to be part of the conversation so that we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. Now, the focus of tonight's session is going to be exploring Einstein Studio Copilot Builder as part of an AI-inspired series this month. So if you're in love with the conversation of AI and want to learn how Salesforce is innovating in this space, this session is definitely for you. Now, as we get started, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel or my co-host today. In that spirit, I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce Mike Norton, Sumit Paliwal, and Tim Miles. Now, Mike is a distinguished technical architect here at Salesforce. He's been recognized for his collaborative and cross-org leadership style, and he's presented twice at Dreamforce on custom applications developed in Force.com. Additionally, he's also my mentor in travel, hospitality, and logistics. Sumit is my is also a principal architect here at Salesforce. He's known for his success in driving technology-empowered business strategies and leveraging innovation and enterprise architecture. Additionally, he was also my Trailblazer trail guide, who's your assigned resource when I took on the role of lead technical architect. And last but not least is Tim, also a distinguished technical architect here at Salesforce, which his engaging personality sets him apart in the Salesforce ecosystem, as much as his forward-thinking and creative approach to building amazing technical solutions. Not my mentor or trail guide, but he's also, to some extent, in our greater team. Now, it's great to have all of you co-hosting Office Hours with me. Welcome. If each one of you would take some time to introduce yourselves, further share your Salesforce experience. Mike, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Carlos. So my name is Michael Norton. Mike Norton is fine. I've been at Salesforce for 6 years. I'm based out of Phoenix. I've been in pre-sales that whole time I've been at Salesforce. But before Salesforce, I was a Salesforce customer at AAA of Northern California for 8 years using Salesforce and leading the Salesforce development team. I was at Amex for about 4 years, at a much larger implementation, about 50 Salesforce orgs, probably around 500 contract and full-time developers. So I have a lot of experience doing Salesforce implementations. I'm a twice presenter at Dreamforce, but often presenter at Cactus Force. That's an event that takes place in January in Phoenix, Arizona. If you ever get a chance to make it, it's a fine event. So I'll pass it to who's next.
All right,
Sumit, please.
thank you, Mike. Thank you, Carlos. I'm Sumit Paliwal, Principal Technical Architect with Salesforce. Overall, I got 21 plus years of ID experience, and I have played different roles in the architecture space. It's been close to 3 years with Salesforce now, and I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
And I guess that leaves me. So, hello everyone. My name is Tim Miles, distinguished technical architect. Been with Salesforce coming up on 9 years now, which is really crazy. Before that, I was a contract developer and also a consultant for basically any type of development as well. And I was also served 9 years in the 38th Infantry Division. So I was a Staff Sergeant E6, and I was the section chief of an artillery crew. So I'm a 13 Bravo. Nice to be here.
All right. Thanks for that, Mike, Sumit, and Tim. Now, for those of us joining for the first time, I always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours. Right, they're an informal get-together or gathering with military trailblazers, allies, to explore non-technical Salesforce career, branding-related topics, to help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals. Now, the next hour is going to be intended as an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective. which will provide additional diversity to the experience of the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat during the window during the tonight's session. I and others on this call, such as David Nava and David Albright, will also be monitoring the chat. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions directly in the chat. We'll do our best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. Finally, tonight's session is going to be recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let me know before speaking, and I'll make sure it's edited out on the final recording. That goes for everyone, including the co-host as well. So on that note, let's go ahead and get started. Now, first we'll go into an introduction to Einstein Copilot Builder. Now, Mike, Tim, or Sumit, any of you can take a stab at it. Can you provide our audience with an overview of Einstein Copilot Builder and explain how it differs from other AI tools within the Salesforce ecosystem, or how it's different?
Sure, I'll give it a try. So you're probably familiar with generative AI if you've heard of tools like ChatGPT from OpenAI. It's a tool that allows you to send it an English-like message and then get a meaningful response. But imagine if you could not just be in a chat window with an AI that doesn't know your specific context. Imagine you're in your CRM, you're looking at your leads, your opportunities, your cases, your customers, and you're able to ask it a meaningful, a brief but meaningful statement, and then get a response from that based on the context. So if I'm looking at a customer record, if I'm a customer service agent, and I'm looking at a customer service record, and I say, okay, well, tell me about the products this person has, and tell me about maybe the problems that they've had in the past. I would enter that into Copilot, which is sort of a sidebar app within our CRM, and it would look at the data. It looks at the customer, it looks at the data, their products, their cases, and can do a summary for that. Now, that is Copilot. Copilot Builder is the tool that people will use to build those experiences out. It's a building tool. I don't think we were going to go into visual demos today, but if you can imagine saying, if I wanted to provide some sample text, if I'm on a customer record and I'm looking for cases, and the person is looking for, and the user asked me for some information, how would I go about writing maybe a flow or some Apex to go and retrieve that data, flow and Apex to do a call out, maybe to retrieve some information in real time, and then bring that back, and then help the agent be the wise assistant to that customer service agent.
Now, so you talked, Mike, about Einstein Copilot and Copilot Builder, right? Now, in the spirit of carrying on with the conversation around Copilot Builder, right? And this again, this will be more for Sumit and Tim to give them an opportunity to contribute as well and collaborate. Is how do you foresee Einstein Copilot Builder revolutionizing the way that Salesforce professionals approach solution building and problem solving within the platform, right? So, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I'll take a shot on that, Carlos. So when you look at Einstein Copilot, or I'm sure you have seen a lot about GPT, right? These are nothing but a conversational interface and understand the way human is trying to interact, right? It does understand to break down your intent in terms of what you're trying to achieve, right? Now, from a technology point of view, traditionally we have been building a lot of UI applications which are kind of rule-based, right? Like every time you want to engage a customer, there are a bunch of set of sequence which the customer has to follow in terms of going into an opportunity, clicking on certain button, there are certain actions to it. So these are pretty much very much wired into your experience layer. Now, what this conversational interface is going to change in this whole new era of technology is you're going to share your intent of what you're trying to achieve. And based on the intent, tools like Copilot is going to render the experience, right? Which is going to be much more modular for any enterprise customer when you're thinking about simplifying it, right? As a developers, when you're building things, you're going to be looking at how can I create these Copilot actions, and actions are nothing but your individual intents, what you're trying to solve. Like if you're trying to go and find the case summary, my intent is one is a case, and the second is I want to summarize a case, right? Now you want to give this and decompose this into different actions, and that is exactly where these tools are actually going to power the engineers in terms of how they can modularize this entire engagement layer, right? Another aspect is on the data side, right? Data side is where you're going to see much more robustness and much more maturity around how you're going to ground this data, right? You want to make sure these LLMs are not going to do anything for your business unless they understand your data, right? And that is exactly where engineers have to make sure the data is more real time. GPT or the underlying LLMs understand your data before they generate any valuable action out of it.
Now, and carrying on with that conversation, to me, like, how do you foresee like Einstein Copilot Builder democratizing app development, right, within the Salesforce community via AI, right? We often on LinkedIn we see people that build apps to track their own certifications, or more recently, I saw someone that built an app to track which ski resorts were open, right? How would you foresee Einstein Copilot Builder as assisting with that as people are more easily able to generate and bring their ideas to life?
So the architecture behind Copilot is again very modular, right? I mean, traditionally Salesforce always been low code or no code, right? Is where even this architecture is, right? Like you don't have to worry about, all you need to understand is how I'm going to solve an action. An action is nothing but creating a flow of work, right? Now, in terms of these individual actions for our ISV partners, I mean, this is an opportunity for you to look at the enterprise and see where enterprise is trying to simplify their business processes and decompose them into these individual actions, which you can package them as a managed packages and start exposing it to your customer, saying that I can solve your code to cash conversation, right? As an example, right? So decomposing into different actions and enabling your ISV and even to your enterprise customer developers, it's going to be much more modular.
So making it where just based on how modular it is, being able to more quickly help customers or help solve problems that our customers want to solve, or just even end users or developers.
You got it. Yeah.
Now, you talked about quote to cash and accuracy, right? Like, to me, that I think of financials, which segues into the other question we have. Tim, this one's for you. From your perspective, how do you think, or how might Einstein Copilot Builder, what are the potential challenges you foresee in ensuring accuracy and relevance of the insights provided by Einstein One, right, Builder, as it's outputting information?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that computers are very good at doing math. That's not difficult. The biggest problem is that everybody's so excited about working with GPT. They want to start using AI. And what's interesting is almost every single one of my customers, they start looking at their data and they realize that a lot of it's junk. And that's one of the biggest things that you've got to do, because before you can even turn Einstein on, or before you can even start looking at Copilot or using Prompt Builder, you got to make sure that your data is correct. Now, what's also neat, and kind of building on what Sumit was talking about, which is with Copilot Builder, the thing that is real interesting for an administrator or even for a developer is when you go to start working with Copilot, there are really 4 different things that you can work with. You can work with maybe what you're looking for is something that an LLM can return. So you're going to use maybe Prompt Builder for this. You might be using some of the data that's inside of your existing org. You might be using a flow. You might be using Apex, or you could be using any facet of all 4 of those things. And that's what really makes it fun, is the fact that when you start working with this and you start asking for it to do things, those actions you're creating are pretty modular. I mean, exactly like what Sumit was saying, is that, if I want to sum up all of my high volume opportunities, well, that's something that I can do very easily inside of a flow, where I can just do a query for that particular account or whatever. And then I'm just going to say, what are my top X number of opportunities? What are the values? And summarize those up. But when it comes back for data accuracy, like I said, the biggest thing is just making sure that your data is correct. You gotta have that. And I right now, I've got 6 different customers who are spending the first month or 2 just cleaning up their data. That's really all they're doing before they even start playing with Einstein.
Yeah,
Yep,
I'll add
and-
a little
and
bit
that-
if it's okay, Carlos. I think one of the other questions is, how is this going to change the way that we solution products? So, build solutions on the Salesforce platform. And you've got to be thinking about this in a multidimensional way. You've got prompts that can call flows. You've got flows that will use prompts. You've got Copilot that can call flows in Apex and prompts. So assembling all of those in the right order with real intent, being able to test those in an environment and then create something that actually has value, it's going to be very complex. You're not going to be thinking about the other technical challenges that we had to solve 5 years ago, 2 years ago, but you need to start thinking about what do LLMs do well? Well, they speak multiple languages, that. So you can say, hey, go fetch me this data, a massive amount of data from something like Data Cloud or another data source. Come back, summarize that data, then you can make another real-time call out to get some real information, maybe weather at a certain location. I've built out a weather API call using a flow and some low-code tools. And then you can wrap all that up and then translate it through the LLM to another language. So it's really, really powerful. So reaching up into that, having all of these tools reach up into your CRM data to grab the initial the keys, reaching down into Data Cloud or data sources to get a massive amount of data, summarizing that because that's what LLMs do well, doing real-time call-outs, and then thinking about the other capabilities of maybe some other LLMs and other models. We haven't talked about the bring your own model aspect of Copilot Builder yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. It looks like Amanda.
Yeah, and really quick before Amanda, before you we hand it over to you, is what Mike's talking about, building that weather API, and the titles of Mike and Tim, right? Distinguished technical architects. They work very closely alongside product, testing a lot of these capabilities out, building proof of concepts for customers, right? So ask them these hard questions, right? It's very rare that we have, even internally with customers, not 1, but 2 distinguished technical architects, or even as well as a principal architect like Sumit, who has a ton of experience with integrations in MuleSoft, right? So not to put you all 3 on the spot, don't hurt me. We're all on the same team. But yeah, please feel free to ask them the difficult questions. Go ahead now, Amanda.
You're muted, Amanda.
Sorry about that. I do appreciate your level of expertise, gentlemen. Sorry, my kids are printing something, if you hear that. But for somebody like me, I am new and I'm beginning, and I would love it if you guys could walk it back a little bit for me, for some of the people in the audience, because obviously this is a tool, but I think it's very important for me and for a lot of the audience to understand that you really have to understand the basics, and you really have to understand all of the things that make up the platform and how to use all of these tools. Flow, I mean, you exampled that, Michael, in what you were saying. And I think it can be very dangerous to be like, oh, well, we're just going to use, Copilot and this can assist me and it's my tool. But if you don't have that understanding, how do we actually use it effectively? So my question to you is for people that are beginning, people that are transitioning, building that foundation is really important. And how do you see us building that level with everything rapidly changing and everybody wants a piece of this AI, but it's really important to get those base skills. How do we do it all simultaneously? That's what I really care about.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, you're not drinking from a fire hose right now. You're drinking from a waterfall with all this stuff, especially if you're brand new. Right off the bat, where can you learn more about all this stuff, right? The best place for you to go right off the top of my head is trailhead.salesforce.com. So definitely go to Trailhead. You have to understand the underlying platform first. So you got to understand what we consider to be an object and why we call them an object and not a table. Once you understand that, and you feel comfortable with it, and you feel comfortable with a lot of the infrastructure that comes with the platform, then that's when you can start looking at flows. Now, the flows are actually, I think they're a lot of fun. I love working inside a flow. And the nice thing is that you can make it as easy or as complex as you want to get. And for those of you who have never played with flow, maybe you've heard of a programming language called Scratch, which was it's a development environment that was created by MIT to teach kids how to program. And what was cool about it was that it was just a bunch of puzzle pieces. So if you wanted a variable, you had a puzzle piece. If you were doing a decision, there was a puzzle piece for that, and it all fit together. And you just snap these pieces together, and you had some logic. The thing that's nice is that when you start thinking about working inside of Salesforce, especially if you're an administrator or you're just starting out, you're going to understand the data that you're working with, and you're going to understand what you want to do with that. And that's where you can start playing with flows. Flows is, you can do almost anything that you want to do with Copilot Builder with flows and the prompt builder, and then just using your CRM. If you start getting into more advanced stuff, then clearly you're going to need Apex, and that's where you're going to have to start writing some real code. And I wouldn't recommend that, especially if you're a beginner. But understanding the platform, figuring out what an object is, field security, that type of stuff, and then you start playing with flows. And then Prompt Builder is just basically, it's like an email template or a mail merge. So once you start understanding the concept of prompt and how to start leveraging a prompt and start feeding that prompt with data from your CRM, then that's where you can start getting into really fun stuff. Now, also, one thing that I wanted to add on to what Michael was talking about, which is when you start working with an LLM, one of the things that I find fascinating about an LLM that it does very, very well, not only does it interpret, a question or a prompt that you put in, that you enter, but the other thing that an LLM can do is it can also return a Boolean value. So you can have it say, I want you to look at this text and I want you to tell me if there's anything negative about it. If there is, then I want you to return true. Otherwise, I want you to return false. And so this is another thing that a lot of people don't think about when they're working with them, is that not only can it generate an email message for you, but it can also do some logic where you can use the results of that prompt inside a flow. And that's something else that you can do, which is really kind of cool. And I mean, that's like, I would say that's like a black diamond in skiing, but once you understand what you're doing with it and you understand the data and you understand what a flow does, you can start doing some really interesting things with Copilot. And I hope that wasn't too much.
That was just enough. Thank you.
Rob, if you want to go, I can't recall if it was Rob or Iris, but Iris, if you want to go next, since I see Rob's hand came down.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were calling on me.
No, please. Then go first, Rob, please.
Oh, okay. So first, Tim, I've not run into anybody else that really knew Scratch. Interesting story on Scratch. My last company hosted like the Scratch like storage for all the projects for a while at Berkeley, when Berkeley was doing one of their courses there, because one of our former employees got really involved with it in Germany or something. But anyway, so interesting aside there. But I guess one of the comments I had was, I've been kind of thinking about this like everybody's picture of Star Trek, you know, computer plot the best course to whatever, given all these terrible things that are happening right now. And I think that's kind of where people are trying to go with all this. You know, you don't have to do what Sumit was saying, like click on everything to do something. You just say what you want it to do, and hopefully, you know, all this will work out and you can do it. My question, though, was really about the data cleanup, because that's really what my background's been for 13 years, is pushing around hundreds of millions of records and stuff like that. We were using unsupervised machine learning clustering instead of, you know, all the supervised and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it was like we would write rules to do identity resolution on things and do massive deduplication and everything in a way that still felt magic compared to anything I've ever seen. And I was just wondering, you know, unfortunately, I'm not there anymore. They had to do some big layoffs and everything. But so I'm trying to make use of that background and wondering, like, you know, people I talk to, oh, yeah, we can do that. And I'm like, well, can you really? Because I've seen how hard that is on like massive amounts of data. And I wondered, are there massive amounts of data out there in this world? It sounds like it, you know, at some of these big companies that really need cleaned up that way. And this is a understanding the use, you know, question, and what's available out there. Like, I don't know what to even compare to and where to look and see where I might fit in. I've been talking to the MuleSoft folks, for example, and oh yeah, we have Data Fabric and it does everything or whatever. And I'm like, really? You know, like because I've heard people that have, you know, we worked with companies that use Salesforce and had a really hard time duplicating 50 different data sources coming in. And so we used our tool and they made an API call and we sent them back, hey, this is a, you know, exact match, a probable match, a possible match, put it on a list, do something with it, let somebody call somebody up and things like that. So anyway, I just wondered what the state of, you know, really cleaning up data was, and what does Salesforce have really great tools to do that right now, or is it still sort of, oh, people are going off and cleaning up their data and then we're getting it into what, data cloud or whatever and doing all that kind of stuff?
Great question, Rob. I'll take the first stab at it and then I'll hand it over to my peers. Yeah, we do recognize that that's a big problem. And if you're familiar with Data Cloud, it's our tool for doing that. And what really, my aha moment when I was exploring Data Cloud was not what it does, but how it does it. We've really sort of democratized how we ingest that data, how we map that data, how we can create some formulas around harmonizing that data and cleaning it up. And that's really where I think that Data Cloud stands out. So I tell people, look, Data Cloud isn't revolutionary. Every IT group on the planet is trying to do exactly that. And they've got it on a 3 to 5 to 8 year roadmap. They can reallocate those resources elsewhere, bring a smaller group in, and you can accomplish with, I'll use a military metaphor, you can accomplish with a squad what used to take you a platoon, right? You probably had an army of, well, now I'm mixing my sizes, sorry. Probably had very large groups of people that were working on things that would take months. Now with smaller groups of people, you can do these things in hours or days. So that's my Data Cloud pitch. That's why when we think about our platform, we really reinvented our platform. It's not just core CRM, it's core CRM, data, and AI. CRM is great. It needs more data. It needs the intelligence. So it's dependent really on those other two. AI is dependent on that massive amount of data, not just data, but clean data, harmonized data. And then it's just a winning combination.
Yeah, I'm just going to add,
Thank you.
right? Like,
Thanks.
sorry, no, just to add a couple of points over there is like, data cloud, and there is a reason why data cloud is there, right? In terms of like any of these LLM models, right? If you don't ground this with the context, what the customer or the business is looking for, right? There is a possibility that it can hallucinate, right? Because if the data is not clean or not accurate, right? That's why it's very important for pretty much for all our customers when we talk to them is the prerequisite is make sure your data is clean, number one. Number two, when you're going to expose this to your models in terms of exposing it to Copilot or the prompts, you want to make sure there is a defined context for you to carry your conversation, right? That's where it gets super tricky, and it's super important, Rob, to your point. You're right. Like, I mean, no one can take that role because enterprise have billions of rows sitting in, and it's like duplicated, right? It's all spread across, right? That's a common problem across all enterprise customers. So it's important for everyone to understand that you need to make sure you're scaling it up, and from a performance point of view, you're not just dumping the trash to your Copilot, right? That's a key.
Now, thanks, Sumit. Thanks, Mike, for elaborating, and Rob as well for your question. Right, like it's been the 50-plus-year-old question of how do we harmonize our data, unify it. It's something that even in the military we saw, right, where typically to reference what Mike's simile is, even at squad level, right, your chain of command will ask for information. As it's going up, it comes into the CQ or whatever a headquarter type element you have in different formats because it's being collected by different people, and someone has to harmonize that data. Now, Iris, if you want to go ahead and ask your question as well.
I couldn't find my mute button. I apologize. First of all, thank you so much for being here, guys. And I love this conversation. Like, so many of my questions are being answered even before they're formulated. And I'm like, awesome source. A couple of things that you said, though, which like, I just want to pull at the thread on a little. When you said something about it will take a squad to complete what a platoon can do, although we hope that AI isn't taking those jobs and things like that, it is making it more capable for people to do more with less. So how do you see like junior roles being evolving with this marketplace to be able to allow, because as you know, a lot of people who are joining these calls, they're still looking for that foot in the door to help them secure their role. And then on the other side of this, I was thinking from like, a business, they've got people who've been there for ages and they're all hearing all this AI stuff and they're all, well, they're probably not excited because they're like, no, I've got to learn something new. They're settled in their career. And how does a company like bring their workforce with them to, to this AI age? So I know it's a lot, sorry.
Yeah, that's great. And we've had technology revolutions before. The internet, if you've been in the workforce for how long have I been in the workforce? Since the 90s, the internet was a big revolution for us. Just being able to get data outside of your company, being able to access that. Just Google revolutionized things. Being able to look for a few terms and getting the response and getting the answer. That used to take remember actually going to a library to look things up, right? Now we have supercomputers in our pockets. So we've been through the mobile revolution, and we've had CIOs and business stakeholders saying, when is our product, when is our service going to be on a mobile device? So there was a mad scramble in the early 2010s to get everything on mobile. So if you, and I wrap this up, if you take the internet and mobile and Google technology and they all occurred at once, that's what we're going through. So it's not just learning about how to do a Google search. Google searching is hard unless you know how some of the tricks to feed it to get things back. That's the way that prompts are going to be. We're all going to need to get really good at at writing prompts, at giving orders in a structured way that an LLM will respond to them. So, but always think of these AI tools as assistants, not job replacement, right? Yeah, I'll let some of the others answer too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with what, as Mike said. Just to add to that, like think of, there is a flow of work, right? So flow of work is not going away, right? For every enterprise customer, there is a set of tasks which needs to be completed, right? LLM can only be smarter, your ChatGPT can only be smarter in terms of finding what all steps are required to get this intent solved, right? But to deliver that, there are engineers who are required to execute those flow of work in terms of automations, and we talk about different ways of achieving that.
What would you guys say then about that? Like if a company has a workforce they absolutely adore and they're trying to bring them along into this AI revolution, how can they give them those baby steps while they're getting the data like in check and ready so that they are ready to utilize Copilot? I mean, I could not live without my AI assistant. I completely agree with you, and it does give me so many tools. But I have colleagues who maybe, you know, no, it's still on my piece of paper, and that's just how. So how would you bring the whole organization or your whole company into this kind of AI revolution? What are your ideas or tips on that?
I think it boils down to the trust layer, right? Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to do a softer answer first. One is that it's going to take some time to take advantage of all this efficiency that we're going to gain. We're going to have to take a step back and do some learnings on what the technology can do for us. It is among the leaders. It's the responsibility of the leaders to tell the workforce what's in it for them. Do you want to do the mundane things, or do you want to have your assistant do the mundane things? What else can you be doing? What other value adds can you bring to take place of instead of the things that you were doing that didn't add any value? There's another workforce simile, so to speak. Has anyone watched a movie from the 50s, 60s, 70s where there's a typing pool? There's a whole room full of a typing pool. Remember 9 to 5? There was the typing pool. Executives don't hand write out things and hand them to someone to type them so that they could print them, so that they could mail them. That's executives, everyone nowadays. We democratize that typing of memos. So I think that's going to play in it some way or another. Every one of us is going to have our AI assistant. We're probably going to have several AI assistants. So, to sort of wrap that up, the leaders need to bring the entire workforce along and sell them on the efficiency gain and the value that they can now add. And I know that there's the other group that we don't want to talk about that doesn't actually want to do something. They just want to sit and do what they were doing today, and they don't want to change. I don't know. That's the Columbia Records mentality, right? Don't want to change. I don't.
Oh my God, I was thinking the same thing. The Columbia Record Tape Club. Ugh. Also, I think, you know, to add on to what Mike was talking about, giving the workforce avenues for education, to learn more about what this, you know, to his point, what it can do for you, but also how you can effectively use it. And now the one thing that I find fascinating too is that, you know, with GPT, this is probably one of the most fun and exciting forms of AI that I've seen since we've even started talking about AI. The ability for me to go to a site and tell it, hey, write me a paragraph about, you know, the migration of the yellow-breasted, whatever, right? And it'll write it for me. But at the same time, although it can return a lot of information, at the same time, you got to take it with a grain of salt. You got to be, right now, we've got to be very cognizant of the fact that this is a new technology. There are going to be bugs in it. There are going to be issues with it. And you got to be able to ascertain what's really good and what's quality and what's junk. And we're seeing that today, as a matter of fact. So, I think a combination of leadership, bringing people along, pointing out what is good, what is bad, what are the guardrails that we're going to give everybody, and then the education for them to learn more about it and how they can effectively use it.
I just love everything you said. I just have one quick point to make and then I'll shut up, I promise everybody. I was thinking though, I was listening to a podcast yesterday and it said something about how large language models like ChatGPT and everything are running out of context for to keep on growing and teaching their learning bots and so on. And I think Salesforce may have actually cracked that nut that once you do get your data in check and you build your Copilot, you have that continuous flow of data coming in that you can continue learning from. And I thought that was pretty genius. So just wanted to put that out there. Well done, Salesforce.
Well, if you really want to blow a microchip, the other thing that's happening too is, when you're looking at all the data on the internet, I mean, do a search about how much data, like I think the data that was been produced in the last, in the last 24 hours exceeds the amount of data that has been produced since the beginning of time or something like that. I forget what that statistic is, but it's fascinating. But not only that, but now AI is getting to the point where it can not only take structured data, so data that's inside of a database, something that's out there, but it can now start referencing unstructured data, so videos, documents, images, things like that. So I read the same thing about read that article about how OpenAI has run out of data on the internet. That's not going to be a problem. I really don't think that's going to be a problem because we just keep adding to it. It's just that they're consuming it as fast as it's being produced right now.
Thank you.
Now, Christopher, we see your hand up. Before we hand it over to you, we're at a halfway point, so we're going to go ahead and take a photo a little bit past the halfway point, and then we'll continue with your question, Christopher. David, do you want to go ahead and take it?
Yeah, struggling to come off mute here. Sorry about that. Yeah, folks, if you want to go ahead and unmute your video, pause your comments, which will cover my face, which could be a good or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. We can go ahead and get that photo. We'll share it on social media the following day. And if you don't want to, totally fine. If you're in your PJs, I respect that. I'll give you a countdown of 3, and we'll snap a quick photo. We'll continue on with Christopher's question. All right, count of 3 here. Get your smiles ready. 1, 2, 3. All set. Thanks, everybody.
All right, hey, thanks, everyone. Now, continuing, go ahead, Christopher, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not sure about my microphone here. More 2 comments. Something that Timothy said, and then something that Michael was saying. With the amount of data that's being created, yes, it's huge, but it also, unlike say waste material from my fridge, I can't compost it. Bad data is just bad data. It's worth less than trash because it's just unusable. And definitely a big problem because we've got more of that data being created. So there'll be jobs for us dealing with that mess for the foreseeable future. And then to Michael, what you were saying about the especially executives using the assistant, I was in IT for a large group for a long time, and when we saw BlackBerries come in, you know, fantastic mobile devices, they could communicate, they were, you know, executive jewelry, but what they used them for 95% of the time was approvals, especially when they got integrated with things like SAP or other systems like that, or just even the email. A lot of the email that went back and forth was, does this look good? Yeah. And they would still send an email with rough stuff to their actual live assistant who knew how to spell, who knew how to, who had the attention to detail to handle that kind of thing. Where yes, I can see AI assistants doing this, but they're going to have to get a lot better at being consistent. They're going to have that, and that's also the reason to use a personal assistant, somebody you trust, because they know your style. And yes, the AI can learn the style, but it's frustratingly close. So yes, I agree that potential is there, but anytime an executive has a chance to delegate, they will do it.
Yeah.
And is the first time that AI assistant screws up their email, they're going to go, I'm hiring a real person to do this. And that's going to happen a lot. Sorry, that my 2 comments there.
And those resources that are now affordable to executives will now be affordable to small business owners. So they'll be able to take advantage of personal assistance, AI, generative things, and so forth. So yeah. And I think you touched on it a little bit. I think once we start blending those predictive AI along with generative AI, and that's something that, going back to our original topic, Copilot, that's something that we're able to do with Copilot, is bring in your own model, build your own model if you want to with Copilot Builder, have prompt templates that you can call that know how to articulate things, know where to get data, and then the Copilot is that sort of container that allows you to do it within the context of CRM. Sorry, I brought it back, but
that's a good point, because that adds to the testing phase of the developer, because they have to test for consistency. At that point. Do the answers generally make sense when they get, you know, the response for it? So, but yeah, it's fun.
Christopher, you segued us really well into the next topic, right? So there's all of a sudden you'll have a sidekick that does the work for you or with you as you're entering the workforce, or there's a paradigm shift. And you mentioned attention to detail as being a necessary skill. So on that note, and this question goes back to the panel, Sumit, Tim, and Mike, or Timothy and Michael, as you've been called today. What are some other soft skills, right, that would be important to not only leverage AI, but as you're entering the Salesforce ecosystem, right? What would be a skill that would be important to have, if each one of you want to add one?
Yeah, I would say understanding what's generative, what's predictive, and what's just basically a formula. I had one of my customers that wanted to have a recommendation, a text-based recommendation based on a product tracking that's maybe delayed. And I said, well, you're really talking about something that's predictive, because you don't need that to be generative. They're not creating anything, they're anticipating something, right? And they're offering something. So being able to understand, first of all, if it's worth creating an AI solution for, how much time are you really saving? If you're saving 3 people 2 minutes a week, maybe it's not something that you should invest a lot of time in. Don't just do AI because it's cool. Do AI because it's going to move the needle. Sorry, one more thing from one of my customers. They determined that they've got a lot of contact centers. It's a large hotel chain. Every second that they spend that they can shave off of a call with a customer is $90,000. So if you can save, yeah, that's a heck of a return on investment. So think big. Think about that, those big problems that you can solve.
Yeah, I'm just going to add, going back to the concept of when you talk about the GPT, the prompt engineering is going to be the most critical aspect for anyone to deliver the result, right? And that is exactly where how descriptive you are, right? How much you understand, how you want to instruct your GPT models on how they should be looking at and solving the problem is going to be a key, right? That's a skill which I've been talking to my customers and making sure they understand that you cannot throw or you cannot let your GPT learn about your intent unless there are instructions given and there is a learning given to your GPT models, right? So that's a part which is going to play a very key role.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I would add is just, it builds on both of what Mike and Sumit said, is just a critical eye. You gotta look at things critically. Don't take anything, at face value. Make sure you analyze everything. And that's also one of the things that's kind of cool about, you've probably heard about the Salesforce trust layer, right? Especially when it comes to AI. And we have the ability to obfuscate data before it ever goes to the LLM. We also have the bias, not bias detection. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm having a really the toxicity score. So when it returns, it will have a toxicity score that we're generating. And then the thing that's about to go GA, I just saw it just the other day, is when it returns something, going back to that critical eye, you're going to be able to analyze what it gives you, and you're going to be able to tell Salesforce whether or not you used it. So that's going to be something that's going to help drive everything with this. So, being able to send something, get something back. Is it what I'm looking for? No, then I'm not going to use it. Add a note, and then it gets thrown in the waste pile, just like everything else, like what Christopher was saying. But those are the types of things that, again, you got to have. And fortunately, Salesforce makes it easy to do that because we built that into that trust layer as well.
On that note, Tim, can you elaborate a little bit on toxicity, right? With those unfamiliar with it, when it comes to prompt engineering, like a quick talk on it.
Yeah. So anybody who's played with GPT or even read about it knows about hallucinations, right? Well, hallucinations are when it just made stuff up. And I read an article yesterday about if you asked OpenAI about who was the lone survivor of Titanic, it came back with the name of somebody and it was completely wrong. It was just completely bogus information. But toxicity is, a bias is where it's leaning one way or another, right? Toxicity is where it's returning something that is not only incorrect, but is not in the right theme of what you're looking for. It's hostile. It's coming back with derogatory terminology or things like that. And so with Salesforce, one of the things that we have is we have an engine that will analyze everything that gets returned, and it will test it for toxicity. And with that score, that gives you kind of an idea. If it's a very high score, well, you got to really go through this thing and make sure that it's not toxic or that there's something that needs to be changed. If it's a low score, then you have a pretty good probability that it's going to be okay, and you can go along with this. Now, and also keep in mind that one of the things that Salesforce does, and I find it fascinating too, is the fact that we always have the person in the middle. There's nothing inside of Salesforce when it comes to generative AI that just says I'm going to send something to the system and it's going to return something and it's just going to automatically send something to someone or it's going to automatically update a record. It always has to have something that is going to return to you. You analyze it and decide whether or not you want to use it or whether or not you want to send it on its way or update a record or whatnot.
Yeah, the term for that is human in the loop. And
go ahead, Mike.
I just add one thing. This is where it gets a little gray. That's why we need that human in the loop, for these terms like toxicity and bias. And there are sometimes in some industries where certain language is appropriate, and in other industries it's not. In certain social settings it's okay. In certain social settings it is not. So yeah, another double down on the human in the loop. You know, doctors talking to their patients, if they're not being direct with them, they can actually be doing them harm. So
Good point.
Now, time for one last question, right? And I know that Amanda had asked a question here in the chat earlier. Amanda, if you want to just go ahead and state it out loud and further elaborate on it.
Wow, you put me on the spot. Now I have to go find my question. Yes. Essentially, data is ubiquitous, right? And anything could be data, and data is, you know, it's infinity. It's going to keep on being created, but what is good data and who decides? I think that was kind of the gist of what I was getting at as I'm scrolling here. But, you know, there needs to be, obviously, you're kind of touching on it with the trust layer, but the thing that I keep thinking about is like, what are the checks and balances, and who drives that? I guess I'll just leave it at that because I can't find it.
So no, I found it. So you're the way we understand it is how is what's determined to be good data for prompt engineering or for generative AI, and who's deciding as well, right? Is that the summary of the question?
Sure. It was more just amusing, just kind of thinking like there's just so many questions that can come up when you talk about this and when you think about this, and just the power behind it. It would just, I think the future is exciting, but the future is certainly uncertain in many ways of which way things are going to go. And I think I would like to hear what they being Mike, Tim, and Sumit, what you think is going to happen in the future with this and how it's going to continue to change and grow.
Oh, wow. And I went off mute because I was going to say something else, but now I'm the first one off of mute, so I've got to think about that. I don't think it's going to be as revolutionary as people think. I think, you know, I'm still waiting for my flying cars. I'm still waiting for laser beams. The future that we thought we would have, you know, 40, 50, 60 years ago is different. We're going to adapt. We're going to make some wrong turns. Just like a few things that we've done, I'll just say social media kind of took a turn, and then, you know, it took some pretty abrupt, pretty bold moves to sort of turn that around. I think we're going to have to maybe take a step back and say, what did I just see? Did that commercial that I saw, or did that little clip of the Joe Rogan podcast, was that real or was that generated? Was that video? You've heard of audio AI that can sample your voice and then speak with your inflection, with your tone. I think that's pretty scary, but you know, I think it's going to make us all a little bit more skeptical. But I don't think it's Skynet. I hope not.
Yeah, I mean, that side of the word is definitely scary, right? But the good side of the word is defining the lane for how your models should act is a flexibility what you're gonna get, like when we talk about Salesforce as a platform, right? Because we want to make sure we are defining the guardrails and we are instructing the model to only look at the data what I'm going to be sending it to, right? And that's going to be very powerful because we are making sure that our customers are not misled, right? And their proprietary data and the grounding is happening within their domain, right? So that's where I feel like very positive. And when I started the conversation, one area which I feel like it's going to be game changing is how you interact today with the whole internet, right? It's going to change, right? And it's going to be more on, you just need one single conversational interface to do everything for you, right?
All right. So with that, before we close, I'd like to thank Sumit, Mike, and Tim for co-hosting tonight's session. It's been awesome having you here and getting your perspective on the topics we discussed. With that, thank you so much for attending. We hope to see you at the next section, and have a great Wednesday night. Thanks, y'all, for your time.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Carlos.